Can I borrow someone's computer again? Oh, and we should pull the screen down for this house.
Since this is a follow-up session, can someone say a few words just for the people coming over where you stopped in the last session?
We stopped at level 3.
No, I know exactly. Everything.
Wait, this one is the second.
Building blocks 2? Yeah.
You're getting Chrome this time.
Thank you.
This one is already on. Room 3 is in there.
Thank you.
Live for the Das da? Ja. Nochmal live.
Room 3 is in there.
Thank you. Okay. So you guys just went through, got up to web mention in the building blocks one? So let me think where to start. I think I will. So you guys just went through. What's happening?
Oh, the sound. You have the
Did
sound
she-
of HDMI.
In the building blocks one?
No, that's that one.
Are you? So let me think
No,
where to
it's
start.
the speaker
I
and
will.
the-
Did you watch the live stream? So you guys just went through. What's happening?
Oh, the sound. You have the sound of HDMI.
In the building blocks one?
No, that's that one.
Yeah, it's open in that tab. Okay.
This way I don't have to turn around.
Are you watching the live stream too?
No, yeah.
Oh my
so
goodness.
now,
Okay.
because we don't have to turn around then.
It's like 30 seconds delayed. It's gonna be a little bit annoying. That was bizarre. Okay, so you got up to web engine. Let's see. So I want to. I want to talk about two things mostly: signing into apps and then using the apps to make posts on your site. So let's see. If you're following up from web mention, so you probably have the idea that you make a post somewhere and then on your site and then it sends web mentions, right? So we want to know how can we quickly make posts with tools that exist, so you don't have to open up a text editor and FTP files around or whatever, et cetera, et cetera.
Bridgie a bit.
Talked about Bridgie. Okay, so let's start with some examples. So here's some notes I post on my site, and I want I also post some photos. First of all, I don't want to have to build every tool that I use to post to my site. I want to be able to use other people's tools that build interfaces that are better. I have built a couple, but I am not an iPhone developer, so I don't have an iPhone app. I haven't built my own iPhone app to post to my site. But let's say I wanted to use somebody's iPhone app to post to my site. So Quill is sort of my reference app for this type of application. This is not my website. This is a totally separate thing, and anybody can log in using their site, use it to post. So where can I start explaining how that works? So the idea with this app is a micropub app. Micropub is the spec that this app will use to create a post on my site. The idea being that if everybody's websites can understand micropub requests and everybody's clients can send micropub requests, then anybody can use each other's apps to post to any website. So that's the reason for having this standardized at this layer, right? So when you first, I'm actually going to use you as an example because I know your site does not support this one. So if I try to sign in as Amber, then it's going to tell me a couple of things are missing. So there's 3 pieces you need for this to work. You need authorization endpoint, which is basically the server that you'll use to confirm this app is allowed to post to your site. Because you don't want necessarily any app to be able to do things. You want to be able to control which apps can post to your site. Token endpoint is just plumbing. That's just part of the backend exchange. And then this is the part that will actually create the post. So your site needs to have a micropub endpoint for this to work. And the micropub endpoint is the thing that will handle the request from Quill or other apps and make the post. So if you have a static website that is actually just literally files on disk, you need to make a micropub endpoint that can create those files, right? That's sort of like the simplest example. If we look at here's what Quill sends. I have documentation on what Quill will send. It'll basically send you these properties in a post request. So if your server, if you imagine, most web frameworks can handle post requests with built-in libraries and tools. Imagine you just you handle this request and you see a property called content. That's where the text you type in this box will show up in that property called content. You would just need to write that to a file somewhere, put your website wrapper around it, save it to disk, and then that post is created. If you have a website that uses the database, then your micropub endpoint would make a new row in the database to add the post, right? What are some other ways people have generated posts? Your site's mostly static. What's your website written in? You don't have posts on your site yet.
Not yet.
It
will be a static site.
It'll be a static site generator. Do you know which one?
Hugo,
okay. And that one uses kind of like templates, source files with templates that get
and
markdown files. So the micropub endpoint would have to create a new source file with the header and the content, and then rerun the build process, right? Your site's known. You have a couple. You have a stream site.
Yeah, Quill posts to known.
Quill posts to known.
Yeah.
So known uses the database to store posts. So the
yes.
Yeah. So the micropub endpoint writes a new row into the database.
Yeah. Git would be another way. It's still at the end files. But
Oh, yeah.
You could, for example, build an endpoint which posts files via Git to GitHub, and then GitHub would generate Jekyll site for you on demand.
Exactly. So the idea is that regardless of how your website stores posts and generates pages, this is a sort of really simple, thin layer that abstracts that all out, because Quill doesn't need to care how your website works, right? So I mentioned Quill because I put a lot of time into making these error messages make sense and be helpful. So if you are interested in supporting this you can actually use this tomorrow to sort of walk through the steps of setting all this up, setting all the pieces up, and building this, because it'll help you along the way. Like, you can literally copy and paste this into your website, and then that step is done. You don't need to change anything there. And then you can literally copy and paste that onto your website, and then that step is done. And those will turn green once you do that. And then this one, you will need to write some sort of code on your server, because it needs to be able to create posts in your backend that is, everybody's is different.
My site is entirely static, so.
Yeah, so you have nothing yet that can automatically post for you. So you would need to add a new piece that can create those, right? So
Somebody can show me how to do that.
yeah, I mean, there's plenty of different ways to do it, depending on what language you want to run, or what environment you want to run it on. That kind of dictates the languages you can use. So let's see. Maybe I should have started with the authentication part, because that's a sort of simpler problem. Did you hear about IndieAuth yet, or signing in to the wiki, that kind of stuff, in the building blocks session? No. Intro. Okay. So when I go to the wiki and try to log in, so what's going to happen here is basically the wiki. There are no usernames. There's no usernames and passwords on the wiki, right? I just want to be able to log in as my domain and say, this is who I am. So the way that I can prove that the person sitting in front of this computer is actually the person who controls aaronperky.com is any number of different ways that are in this list. I publish my email on my website, so this tool can send an email with a challenge, and I think because this is not my computer, that's going to be the easiest way to get this to work. So it just sent me an email, and if I type in that code, then verified, now I'm logged in, and notice that my username is aaronperky.com, so no password. I was able to log in on a shared computer. That's pretty neat, I think. So that's the sort of IndieAuth basic version of the IndieAuth flow, which is just I need to prove that I am in control of this website. I am who I say I am. Logging into Quill is different, because Quill is actually trying to do something to my website. The wiki doesn't need to do anything to my website; it just needs to know who I am, and that's this eternal confusion in documentation about this stuff is authentication versus authorization, and it's really unfortunate they both start and end with the same 5 letters. So I usually like to call it identification, because that's what you're trying to do. Is the wiki is trying to identify me. I think authentication is technically the more correct term, but yeah. So authentication is probably the next easiest piece to set up, because you don't have to write any code for it to work, and then you can slowly own more and more pieces of it. I'm trying to decide how much into the different IndieAuth pieces to go, and you're a great example of running your own authorization server. Who has questions so far? which of these, sort of given a quick overview, is there any in particular thing that you want to go more in depth on?
Can you cite? You can use Quill with any in identification, yeah? I mean, so how do you sign out and sign in as somebody else?
So I didn't actually log into Quill, but if I, it's the same on the wiki, is there's usually just a logout button. Once you've, so on the wiki just needs to know who I am.
Yeah.
And then at that point, it takes over and remembers that. So the wiki has set a cookie in my browser. The wiki now knows who I am, and if I click this logout button, it just forgets that. And now, the next time I come back, I have to prove myself again.
Right.
And the same is true for Quill, where
Is Quill still able to post on my site if I sign out?
yes. So when you sign out of Quill, all that does, because of the way Quill is written, it just drops the browser cookie. It doesn't delete the access token itself.
And my auth access token server also doesn't know that
And
I'm actually logged out.
yeah. So this is actually a problem with this is a thing that happens on most sites. Like if you search for the Google what do they call it? Authorized applications or something. Most of the services will give you a list of applications you've either third-party applications you've authorized or current browser sessions that are logged in, and then they will provide buttons there to revoke those sessions or revoke those permissions. So we kind of have the same situation here, where once I log into Quill and let give Quill an access token to post to my site, if I want to be actually absolutely sure that I'm logged out of Quill and Quill can't do anything anymore, I would have to go to my website, go to the list of access tokens I've authorized and delete it. And we can spec that out and make it work in a standardized way to some extent, but I can never fully trust a third-party application to respect it.
Yep.
There's in the OAuth working group, there's a spec for I forget what it's called. It's about sessions and session expiration, so that an app can actually signal this user logged out. Please revoke this token now. So we could basically adopt that. So the way that this actually works is actually very similar to OAuth. It's all built on top of OAuth. So all of those specs still apply here. We just have a couple of extra constraints around them.
One question. It depends on having your own domain, or can you actually have an interaction between two services which do not belong to you? Your GitHub to your Twitter and your Twitter to your GitHub.
For identification,
Yeah.
I believe that I think we actually we tried that one time and it worked. Your website doesn't have to be just a plain domain. It could also be a folder like twitter.com/username, and I think here I can't remember who it was, but oh no, it works with the Twitter one. Anyway, yeah, at some point we logged into everything, tweaked the URLs, went back to each other, and authenticated as a GitHub URL by signing in on Twitter, which is kind of a weird hack. The other thing is that you don't need you don't need to have a root domain. It can definitely use subfolders, and I think I can actually demonstrate that on this site. This is actually another useful tool for testing this stuff, because once you sign in, you'll I wish I'd done that code thing here. That's too long to copy, or to write by hand. I'll do it anyway. should have thought of this. I sure hope this works. I'm glad the live stream is delayed by 30 seconds because I'm going to be able to use this
Genius.
code before someone on the live stream can steal it. I sure hope the L's and the A's, the L's and the I's are right.
No.
We just expired from all the time.
Yeah, this may not be a good plan.
We should generate better typable tokens.
Should have generated tokens that didn't have ambiguous characters in them. Yeah, there's no way for me to know if those are L's or I's. Do you have iMessage on here? No. Okay.
I think so.
You don't get your phone messages on your computer. Oh, I wonder if.
Also ich würde sagen, jetzt, das betrifft eigentlich uns hier in erster Linie und ein paar von uns, die also dieses Supergeek
Who's MacBook Pro?
das sind so die,
No, not this one. Darn.
Put it onto Etherpad.
Oh, that's brilliant.
der Maker, den haben wir jetzt,
Thank you.
vielleicht haben wir ihn deswegen hinten angestellt, weil wir jetzt was zugeordnet Ganz ja. So, das wäre jetzt so eine Geschichte, die wir. Also, ich weiß nicht, ob ich das habe, ich denke, dass auf jeden Fall ein guter nächster Schritt wäre, das zu installieren. Das wäre so ein morgen.
Nobody steal that. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. That was clever. Now I'm signed in. All right. It's hilarious. So what I was going to demonstrate is I can basically, this is a micropub test tool which will essentially pretend to be a server or pretend to be a client. So you can test the other one that you're building. So if you're building an app, which you can add your app here that you're building, and then it'll pretend to be a server that you can talk to from your app, and it'll make you run through all the tests and stuff. So we can, for example, I can add a Quill demo app, and now this is an Indie auth URL that I can use. So this becomes essentially a new identity. And I'm logged in, so that didn't. So this is like, here is a user profile page. It doesn't look like anything in the demo, because, but this would be like your home page basically with blog posts on it. And for the demo, this just has everything it needs for the demo to work. So if I take this, I can actually sign into stuff as this URL now. For example, the wiki. So, all right, it found a way to log in. So I'm going to log in here. And oh, look at that, the wiki didn't, oh yeah, because the wiki is not trying to get post scope. This one will work. So Quill, here's what it looks like when it turns green. It found the authorization endpoint, token endpoint, micropub endpoint. I'll sign in. And then this is the sort of OAuth prompt that you see anytime you log in to any OAuth application using your Google account, your Facebook account, or whatever. It'll always say, this app wants to blank, do you approve? In the micropub rocks, it's just a dumb, simple example of it, but normally it has like the developer name, the application icon, and then you click allow, and that now I'm signed into Quill, and Quill has an access token. So this access token is how the application will create posts on my site. So continue. Can I do a split?
They don't.
You have spaces on here, but there we go.
You want them next to each other?
Yeah, I want them on the same space.
You have to make one full screen and then drag another one on the full screen.
Oh, you can do that?
Yeah.
Well, this will work.
So far, basically, you go to a client, a micropub client, editor like Quill. You log in there, normally like IndieWeb, like on the wiki. By doing so, Quill goes to your domain, checks for the endpoints it needs, then redirects you to your own to one of the endpoints in order to get the token to do something in your name. You have to allow that. Then you get automatically redirected to Quill, and now you have the whole form view to do something.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And Quill happens to be a server-based app. So there's a server running at this domain with its own database, and it has stored the token in the database. But this works the same way if this is an iPhone app, where the app on my phone does the same thing Quill does, and then the app stores the token on my phone.
So yeah, the token is like with all the other OAuth authentications per app per service.
Per app per service, yeah.
So if you have if you've authorized Quill more than once, is it only the last one that counts?
It counts for what?
Being able to use Quill.
It's up to your micropub endpoint or your token endpoint to decide.
I mean, I don't understand why you even end up with more than one. Well, that's probably more detailed.
No, I mean, if I log into Quill on my desktop and I log in on my phone.
Right.
So I've issued two different tokens to Quill, but Quill doesn't actually know about multiple sessions, the different devices. It actually only stores one token for the user. So as soon as I log in on my desktop, it's going to get a new token, and then because my phone's already logged into Quill, it'll use that token. So it's up to my server to decide, like, should old tokens still work if I've granted a new token to the application, or should they not? And that doesn't have to be part of the spec. It can just be a decision of how the server works, right? So posting from Quill, if I hit post, oh, I didn't even mean to click that, but I clicked it. Quill actually sent this request to the micropub box with h equals entry, access token, and hello world. And then the micropub endpoint received those and then showed the post. And the way that this tool works is that basically you have a bunch of different kinds of posts that you can try to pass. Basic one is just hello world, but then another one is send a post that has categories. So I would say IndieWebCamp and IndieWeb. And so that sent, it added these two things to the request, right? And then usually the server will say, okay, those are tags on my posts, so I'll show them as hashtags. But again, it's up to the server to decide how to show those. And then there's uploading files. So you can post a photo. This will let you choose a photo or upload from a URL. There's doing updates, which is a relatively new thing, but I've been using it more and more for different things. So you can update a post later to add a photo to a post, or change the content of a post, or add new tags, things like that. And it's all part of the micropub spec to manipulate these posts. I feel like I'm doing a very scattered job of describing these things.
Is the content HTML or is it just plain text?
In this, it's just plain text. There is a different test for HTML, and that's because Quill needs to be able to tell the server that it's sending HTML. Otherwise, you'd end up with really bad either double escaping or script attacks. So I wrote a separate interface in Quill, the Quill editor.
Oh yeah.
So I can do like bold, italic, and I can even embed images in HTML. But then when you publish that, it looks different. It's a JSON request, and I don't know why that isn't letting me scroll. Oh, there it goes. So instead of just text, it actually is an object with a key called HTML. And that way the server knows that this is intended to be interpreted as HTML. So when you render it, please escape the characters so that you don't, or please don't escape the characters so that the formatting shows up. Whereas if I typed this in the text form, it should escape them so that it shows up as written.
How would one in such encoding reference images?
Image tag.
And the file itself then?
Two ways that can work. So it turns out you can actually embed image data into an image tag with a data URI. Base64 encoded as a data URI. Not the nicest thing to do, but it works. The other way is with this idea of a media endpoint, and that is, should be able to test it. This test. So I think I actually have to sign back in for this to work. So. Copy that. Okay. So the way this one works is there a photo on your computer I can upload? Maybe I'll download one from the wiki.
Photo booth.
Yeah.
Genau. Also um das vielleicht jetzt nicht nur diese Person fertig zu machen, sondern auch das in ein Format zu bringen, in dem man das dann hoffentlich
Someone uploaded a photo recently, right?
eine Diskussion auch anzustoßen. Ich glaube, da hängen die Wiki, das kann Düsseldorf auch ganz klar raus, dass
So now when I choose a photo, what's actually going to happen is Quill actually recognized that this server supports the media endpoint, and it uploads it first, returns a URL to the file, and then that is used in the post. This looks more impressive actually when I do it from here. So let me start over. So if I'm writing an HTML post, and I go and I choose an image, it actually goes and uploads it before I'm done writing the post.
And then you can reference it.
And now this is actually an image tag to that URL. So now if I go to the test for HTML post, and if I save this, now we can see what it sent. Oh, look, it has an image in it. And what did it do here? It's image source equals the URL that it returned. So I think that's a pretty clever way of doing file uploads in a friendly way. And that was actually based off of the Twitter API design, which does the same thing. If you imagine you're in the Twitter app and you click upload a photo, it actually starts uploading it before you're done writing the tweet. And then when you hit tweet, it's already on the server, so it doesn't have to wait. So it also lets it
More user-friendly.
it's more user-friendly.
In such a setup, which site would be responsible for sending web mentions or syndicating
Yeah.
to Twitter?
So Quill doesn't know about. You probably don't want Quill to have credentials to post to Twitter for you.
Yeah.
Also, you don't want apps like Quill to have to write code for each silo you want to post to. So, because of that, there's this idea of syndication, and it's built into it's part of the micropub request, where you can basically tell Quill, here are all the things that I want you to be able to tell me to post to. So Quill actually fetches this list from your server, and all it is a list of names and IDs. So in querying this is basically what Quill made this request. Tell me all the syndication endpoints that you have, and then the micropub endpoint replies with the name and an ID, and that's what shows up here is the name. And then let's go just do it back to the simple one. When Quill posts, what Quill is posting is actually just this line, which is just the ID. So Quill says, the user pressed this button, go do something. And your micropub endpoint says, oh, I know how to syndicate to that place. And that might be Twitter, and then it uses your Twitter credentials. Or it might be Indie News, which uses its own syndication protocol, or whatever. But the nice thing is it means that the apps don't have to know all the different ways that they can post to the different syndication targets. So the same thing is true for web mentions. It's the micropub endpoint then is responsible for telling something to send the web mentions after that post is created. Quill doesn't know about sending web mentions from your site.
Is there a way for extensions or something like that? For special fields that my endpoint supports? So
yes, there is. The challenge is that there isn't a way for clients to know about them, but you can definitely. So the way that the micropub vocabulary works is it's meant to be a mirror of microformats. So we talked about microformats vocabulary being slowly evolving and things get added to it after there's rough consensus. The idea is that anytime any of those are adopted for microformats, it should also work in micropub.
So technically, whatever my writing client sends in the form of micro formats as long as my backend supports it, it would build it into the site. But there's no way for the client to ask for, do you support the H entry field HYZ?
Yeah. So there isn't a spec way to have this list of fields change, right, based on what your server supports.
Yeah.
Some people have written micropub clients which are entirely configurable, so you can go in and add new fields with custom property names, whereas Quill this is what Quill sends, but some micropub clients will let you go and change and like add a field and a property, because the micropub spec lets you do that, and it's up to your backend to support that. So you also notice all these other different icons in Quill. Quill supports a couple of weird ones like this one, which is when I'm posting my travel plans. This is a microformat that I just made up because I needed one. It's not at all standardized. And then this sends the corresponding micropub request based on that. But my website actually stores everything in microformats vocabulary. So I store it very much similar to a Jekyll post where there's a header block and then the content. And the header block is basically just a YAML version of the microformats. So if you imagine a repost or in reply to, I actually just have a property in my header called in reply to, and it's the URL. So this is sending a pretty complicated structure, and that just gets stored in my site, and then my site knows how to deal with it. So I've sort of extended it that way. Yeah. What other questions people have?
Maybe have once again the question with IndieAuth.
Mm-hmm.
To make it easy for people to use IndieAuth, even if they don't have their own domain, is there any way to do that? Is there any service that can become your first step towards, like what I was asking, you have GitHub, Twitter, and they cross-validate, but you don't want to have people have to have their Twitter URL on GitHub and their GitHub URL point to Twitter. Is there a way to do that, but to have people not have to have their own domain?
So there are plenty of ways to do authentication, right? There's you can use Twitter as an authentication provider. You can use GitHub as an authentication provider. The goal with the web signing into the wiki as your URL and signing into other people's websites as a URL is that the identity used is in control of the user. So it's possible, but it's not a very interesting problem to allow somebody to sign in to IndieAuth as a GitHub identity, because it didn't really solve any problem. The problem is that if you use somebody else's identity, like GitHub.com, then you're basically just beholden to them, and they can decide to stop supporting that or decide that you don't deserve that username anymore, and that's the problem that we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, I was thinking like to build a service that does that. Like as you have Quill, you have a service that acts as the authenticator for everyone, and they don't need to have their own domain.
So, not even your own domain is a fine goal, but the solution to that shouldn't be centralize the identity around somebody else. We don't want to encourage you to just like farm out identities to random service providers. You want people to buy into their identity in some form. It doesn't have to be a domain name, but it needs to be something that they can control.
Okay.
So, because you can debate the amount of ownership of domain names we have anyway. We're essentially all just renting names from a giant registry. So that's a fuzzy line, So so the .com registry is basically like a business, right? There's a company set up to issue .coms and take money in exchange for names. You can imagine doing the same thing at a smaller level where somebody could sell subdomains or sell subfolders of identities. But the important thing to get across to people is that when you're using something that you're buying from somebody else, you need to make sure that you trust them. And like I trust the domain name registry system well enough because it is so well established and there's a lot of things relying on it that I trust it'll keep existing. I don't trust that Twitter will let me keep my username forever, right? I've definitely seen people just lose their Twitter account or it gets renamed because somebody decides that they want it and then Twitter just says, okay, we'll give it to the other person, right? Like that happens. So when that's your identity, your identity is tied to twitter.com, you need to, whoever you're getting your identity from, you need to make sure that you trust them enough to do that. So, yeah, we want to make it easy for people to have web identities. So it would be nice if there was like a market around this where many companies were competing to issue identities to people so that they all had to compete on being good at it. And Twitter is not trying to do that. Twitter is trying to compete on selling your eyeballs to advertisers, right? So they definitely don't have your interest at heart. So I have no intent on promoting Twitter as an identity provider, right? That makes sense? I guess I'm saying the framing of the question doesn't really make sense, right? Your original question was how can we make it easier for people to sign in?
My original question is how do you give the power to use IndieAuth to 1 billion people? Because not everyone will have their own domain. If you have a service that it can empower them and to get away from the Twitters of the world, if that is doable, that is my question, without them having to have their own domain.
But they already need a space to post their content to.
Yeah, I'm talking about authentication, I'm not talking where they will post it to.
Yeah, but it's strongly connected, because if they don't have a way to post something to it, then they can have an identity, or vice versa.
I mean, you could imagine posting just kind of like the wiki where we all contribute to a commons.
Yeah.
And I just need to identify myself to that, and then I can do stuff within that system. And that's a valid use case. You know?
You technically just go to the wiki page, and if you don't have a domain name that you own for your own, just enter your Facebook URL as a domain name, and in that case could work, but only if the wiki system
if the wiki supports Facebook,
supports Facebook
totally,
in that case.
Yeah. But that's gone if Facebook takes away your name.
Yes,
yeah, so
but you could switch later.
No.
Just not
the
later.
problem is you
could switch before just by adding maybe your own domain linked at RealMe on your Facebook page.
And I think that's exactly the problem is that people don't think about it until after it's gone.
Yeah.
And that's not like people aren't going to proactively migrate away from using their Facebook identity because it's not a problem until it's too late, until it's a problem, right? So I would rather not encourage that from the beginning.
It's not, in that case, it's not ideal.
Yeah, but so I think the way I envision lots of people having identities that may not be their own domain name would be having many different identity providers that are competing as identity providers to be good identity providers, not to be advertisers. And you would find one that you trusted for some reason and sign up there and use that as your identity. we kind of already do this with the domain name registry system. There are some top-level domains that people trust more than others because some are run by governments, some have different policies. So we're essentially already in that situation with domains anyway, where I trust .com, but I may not trust .tk. Who was it? Is it the sketchy TK domain, right? I don't know what that was about, but maybe was there some like historical issue of someone got their TK domain revoked for something? It's happened with LY actually.
I think many piracy sites are on TK.
Oh, is that what that's about?
That's why.
So they probably have actually a very protective policy where they won't take down domains even if they're sketchy. So the sketchy stuff ends up there. But yeah, there's some countries that prohibit certain types of content on the country domains, and they will take down the site. So we're all renting that stuff anyway.
Unfortunately, I think we have to wrap up.
Yes, it is 3:30.
We are already in the middle of the next session.
No, not in the middle.
Okay, maybe not. At the beginning.
What's the next session?
I don't know.
It's mine. Decentralized social networks.
Cool. Thanks for all the questions.
Thank you.
Don't do that. You're deafening people on the street.
Oh, right, the microphone.
When you're trying to figure out what's happening at your end with micropub,
Thank you.
that's what I find hardest, because micropub rocks gives you an error message, and you kind of go to
A static website, you need dynamic things to happen. It's in the third room.
Yeah.
What could I do and what kind of communication a lot of problems here in Germany will be solved. Because, for example, I think it's not that simple legally to use the avatar from someone who commented on my page, even if I just link the URL and not host the picture myself. If I host the picture myself, I think it's even worse. So all those things brought me to the question: is there something like a licensing agreement that the other person could have to its page to signal me? I sent you web mentioned, and it's okay for you to
Wait a few minutes, right?
Your side
Take a small break.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting hearing about choosing laws like that, right? Where you want to be very restrictive and you can't do both. You can't even give up your copyright.
I need to have a short break.
You can't sign copyright.
Yeah.
Maybe join me.
Yeah.
We're just talking about the whole time.
Yeah. So I said this, we take a small break.
Yeah, so I
Also,
we
we
look
will
at things when you're talking about comments where we're all on each other's website, comments flying around on the right. You consider they've all centralized that. So what the problem is, you can post anything to implicitly granting a license to them to do stuff, and because people are reading on it, they don't have to worry about it.
We take 5 minutes.
But we don't have much
5 minutes.
because
Yeah, we take some break.
I think you would expect it on the show, I expect it on the show, but now I've copied it. And I'm going to republish it. So it's, essentially in order for me to do that, in order for me to show a comment by somebody, I actually need a license from them to republish their content, essentially.
Yeah, because if they have it into the comment box on my site, then it's clear where I can up. And then, okay, there's the liability and stuff, but at least it's clear that the author of the comment intentionally did this. Whereas like if it's somewhere on the web and someone sends web mention, because somebody wrote about that calls the internet and sends web mentions for everything, because not, then that's not necessarily connected to the sender, or it's like something inbuilt into the software.
So one of the things I was thinking was, is there a way we can be, let's take a positive frame on this, which is when I'm commenting on someone's post who has a new website, I want them to be able to use my photo and show my comment. And I want to make sure that they know they can. That's the positive aspect of this, is that we all probably all agree that's what we want for our own websites. How do we make sure that people know that? And is there some sort of, can I include a license on my webpage saying essentially that? I
Create a common style.
Create a common style where I am granting you these rights. If I'm replying to your post or if I link to your post, you have the license to include the full content of my post, or include just a snippet of my post. You can include my name and my photo. And then what are the sort of permutations of that? Like, do I want someone to republish an entire blog post of mine? Do I want to prevent people from republishing the whole blog post of mine? Yeah. Like, what are the sort of ranges of these?
Can we get the microphone closer to here? So, Martin, this over there.
No, since he can hear us.
Yeah, he can barely hear us from there, so we can move it over.
Can we just move us over there?
You know, it's interesting, Aaron, when you were the workshop the other day, we were talking about app.
Oh, all right.
And the fact that, you know, you put the script in your head and now Google crawls your site and sees, all right, there's an AMP version and it indexes that, but then not only that, it then proceeds to serve up a copy from Google domain. And I never signed an end user license agreement with Google. And is that weird? But Google's doing that, and we're pulling out people's H entries from their blog posts and republishing them on our sites.
Without ever explicitly agreed.
In both cases, there's an implicit, like, well, why else would you do it? Why else would you publish that thing? And also, this is the web, and every time you visit a web page, you're making a copy of it, and that's the way browsers work too, is it's copies all the way down. But where's that line?
Making a copy is different from republishing, and I think that there are more considerations when you are actually republishing something, which is what Google is doing. They're republishing your content. Also, when I show a comment, I'm republishing that content.
So from a legal point of view, there, as far as I know, that it's the country-by-country basis of what constitutes fair use in America, fair dealing in the UK. I don't know what it's in Germany, but yeah.
It's like, for instance, like in a few European countries now, they had like for Google News, like laws about how much can Google cite without paying fees to the newspapers, or can the newspapers force fee. So
is it a percentage?
Yeah, like so Germany now made the Leistungsschutzrecht, which is a horrible law which doesn't clearly state what it means, and so like some newspapers say it's like 7 words, some people say okay 3 sentences or so is probably fine, but it's entirely clear and it's so bad that some newspapers do this. They explicitly publish like we do not make demands under this law.
So that's what you're talking about, is a way to explicitly say you have permission to quote in full.
Yeah.
Doesn't Creative Commons do that anyway?
Kind of.
I mean, does
Creative. If you put your content under a Creative Commons license, that would allow republishing if it's properly attributed. So like I think Aaron has.
Depends which one you use.
Yeah, depends. But
Yeah.
but like many are Creative Commons. But I think most of the licenses. Most of the licenses require that you put like a clear attribution, and I think in some cases the information which license it is under it. I'm not sure with Creative Commons.
Creative Commons attribution, no modifications. Would that cover republishing a comment?
Probably.
Yeah.
Even with Creative Commons on the web, you run into little issues. So you can use rel equals license to point to a license.
Mm-hmm.
So from my URL, I can link to a Creative Commons license that says attribution or no modifications. But the way rel works is that it's for the entire page.
Oh, right. And this is a problem because I may not want to license my graphics.
Yeah, my
like
navigation,
my site design,
all that.
I only want to license the
scope it. Like I want this H entry has a license of attribution.
So that seems like a great example of another one of the rel values that we should make available as an H entry property.
But rel value itself, the way rel is an attribute.
but the way that we originally had done, for example, in reply to, was a rel value. And then as soon as we were like, oh, but we're going to show a bunch of replies on the page, we can't use a rel value.
Yeah.
So then it became just a property on the H entry in reply to.
Yeah, okay,
Right.
got it, yeah.
So it sounds like license might need to do the same thing, where it just becomes a property, license, and it links to, like the rel, it links to a URL that describes the license, but then because it's inside the H entry, it applies to only the content in there. And because it would be a microformat, I think at that point we could even go one step further and say it applies only to the parsed version of the microformats. So it's very explicitly not including any design elements that you have on the website inside your H entry. Because the consumer is only going to see the parsed version anyway, so we can make it very explicit that it's
how would that work if it's kind of the worst case if I have my text with images with other licenses in it as part of the
Then you tag the images.
Yeah, you have to do
but
that.
then I couldn't say the whole H entry is under Creative Commons because maybe some images are not, but maybe it would be okay for you to reference or use some part of my H entry, but not, for example, images is, I think, a good example.
Yeah, because like the typical example blog post with a stock photo from some Creative Commons source.
But in general, the idea to have a new, updated microformat for licensing sounds good.
So what I'm thinking is, can we, if Creative Commons is sufficient, can a few of us start including
license?
You just start using license on an entry as a proactive way of saying, please feel free to use my content in this way.
Use content of this parent.
And is there anything in one of these like Creative Commons licenses that either is too restrictive, too permissive, or is missing something that we need?
At which point you can link off to another license.
Or
write your own license.
Right, write your own license, or that's a modification of that, or whatever.
Matcha looked at a few of the Creative Commons licenses, so like with CC BY, you have to provide a link to the license, so you would have to mark your republished comment with the license and the link.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And worst case is which might sound initially like a good idea, are the non-commercial ones, but what exactly is commercial use is heavily debated. So like if I have advertising on my blog, I can't republish a comment because there's a business. Even if it's $10 a year, it's a business, or at least commercial in that way.
That's interesting because it, in order to fully understand whether you're allowed to republish content, you actually have to read the license, and that makes the ability to do it in a standardized way very difficult.
Yeah.
At least there's, CC by NC, which is essentially a standard where people know what that means. But if somebody wrote their own license, then there's no programmatic way to know what to do with it.
Yeah. Sebastian Lasse has a link to some Dublin core for licenses. I have to look at the link. I mean, normally Dublin core is horribly complicated, but the topic is horribly complicated. So
it's true.
And they're from a background where they care about this stuff. So
yeah.
That's interesting, and also what I found interesting, because like we had also like a bit with privacy with regards to Bridgie, that Tantec has on his Facebook page a notice that says parts of what you comment on my post could be republished on my site.
So that's kind of the reverse license.
Which of course
that's like the terms of service that
it's like additional terms of service, which no idea if that's of any legal relevance, but but has the moral.
It's at least a social relevance.
Yeah, it has the social and moral relevance of informing.
That is interesting.
In relation to that, there's also another aspect totally apart from the copyright question. You probably all got these emails the last few days that Twitter changed their privacy rules. And actually, I read into that a little bit yesterday, and they also updated their developer policy, which is an interesting document to read, especially now where you can read the old one and the new one. And they have extended it by a lot of terms, which to me seem to be preemptive for the GDPR, which will be in effect May 2018, when anybody who is running a database business or has users from within the European Union will have to comply with.
Can you shortly sum it up? I haven't heard of it before.
Unfortunately, I'm not a legal expert, but the GDPR was approved a year ago, and there's a 2 years transition period, after which it will be a compulsory ruling in the European Union affecting anybody, how would you say, like associations, companies, and also public administration, to comply to very strict rules in terms of how to deal with your users' data. And based on what I've been reading into this, for example, affects also freelancers. So if you're a freelancer, you have a registered company name, and you're running your personal blog, you might actually, I would be interested to talk to a lawyer about this, but you might actually be covered by this. And this extends to a lot of things, like anybody whose information you're collecting may at any point request you to deliver them a complete and readable registry of this, and can request to be deleted and all these things.
Like, I think like for example, like your blog is clearly advertising for you being a professional at UX, and it being worth hiring you. It's probably that. I mean, so that could at least in some parts. I mean, it often comes also up with like usage rights on images and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where like, okay, for instance, like is a web designer's blog advertisement for that independent web designer? Is he running the blog about web design or design in general because he wants to be hired? Or like with photography? I think with photography, it's even a thing in the. I think it's even relevant in the US, because you can like stuff because it's kind of photographers sort of can publish stuff in their personal. Sort of like as personal projects. They can go out and do street photographies and stuff like that of people in the US. But if but they can't sell the picture to a company to use for advertising purposes. And in the case of photographers, they are relatively established as long as it's clearly a portfolio and it's sort of showing I can do this kind of photography, then it's not counted as being advertisement, so they can publish that, but it's sort of a gray area.
So the thing is that all of this is going to become incredibly difficult as of next year, May. And the thing is also that this is not a European directive which would have to be transferred into national law in each member state.
It's not.
But it's a regulation which means that as of May 25th next year, this is actually binding law in the European
Isn't that even better? Because this way you only have one law, not maybe
it is
a little bit different in each country.
That's why it has been done. But the thing is now, of
But it
course,
means it
this
applies.
comes with a crazy amount of implications.
Oh, okay.
And now we're in the territory where we need a lawyer, and I'm definitely
Because
not qualified to talk about this.
Who wants to be the lawyer for today?
My point being is just like I was looking into this new Twitter developer policy, which is effective June 18, 2017, and there it says, for example, under C, respect users' control and privacy, which clearly has been extended. I've been reading a little bit about this GDPR, and this clearly kind of reflects. There's C4.4 here. If your service will display content to the public or to end users of your service, and you do not use TwitterKit or Twitter for websites to do so, then you must use the Twitter API to retrieve the most current version of the content for such display. If content ceases to be available through the Twitter API, you may not display such content and must remove it from non-display portions of your service as soon as reasonably possible.
So
And that's clearly because Twitter is required by this EU regulation that if their user demands their content to be removed, that they also remove it, pull it from anybody whom they have granted to get access to this. This is my interpretation.
Yeah,
but on the plus side, they now get called every time someone wants to have access to this content, even if it's not on Twitter. So
Yeah.
it's also a plus side for Twitter.
But so this is the motivation why I have been experimenting now with this. How could I present the face pile as kind of showing that there is feedback going on, but without having to check each of those tweets every time I display it, whether it's still.
I think like there have been rules like, okay, you're supposed to use the Twitter embeds for display.
I mean, we've probably
before,
already
but
been in breach with some Twitter policy, always with this.
Yeah,
I don't know. I remember they have
nobody
discussions.
wants Twitter or Facebook to look closely at Bridgie.
Yeah, of course. But now this seems to be, and this might then also have implications for me as a service provider, because I'm running a website and having a company ID register on my name.
And here just quote, because Marta has more time for Googling than us and finds the information.
Good. Yeah. Great.
Which is great, like, personal data is any information relating to an individual, whether it relates to his or her private, professional or public life. It can be anything from a name, home address, photo, an email address, bank details, post on social networking websites, medical information or a computer's IP address.
Nice.
I mean,
Pretty broad.
since the European courts
And it's Wikipedia.
now decided that, or more or less clarified that IP addresses are PPI, PII.
That's a good part,
Yeah, which
So this just even points to the need that if I send you a web mention, I need to be more upfront about giving you permission to republish it.
Yeah.
Right. That would make none of this matter, because like I'm not trying to make you fight lawyers. I'm not trying to.
You can give permission, and we even have an automated mechanism to delete stuff.
Yeah.
Do we have?
I mean, if we say, use the license property and link to the license, and then as long as there's a small list of licenses that are possible, then it can be done all automatically, right?
And for deletion, it's if you delete a post and resend the web mention, then the target is supposed to delete it.
Oh.
Or hide it at least, which would be, which for most purposes would be enough.
But technically, I don't know about this new law, but I don't have to, because when you post something under, for example, Creative Commons,
Yeah, of course. Yeah. If it's Creative Commons license, then
I have the right.
Then
at
you
that
already have the
moment,
license.
Then there is no way for you technically to say, please take this down, because
Probably, yes.
that's an interesting point, because that makes it maybe not that interesting to use Creative Commons, because I never could really think about having this post or comment public.
That's the
Because I
consequence
can't
of
take it
license.
offline.
Well, that's when we look
Oh,
at
the Creative Commons license is not revocable?
No.
Just looking from the point of view of services, you're saying like, you know, from 2018 they're going to have to, users will have to be able to have the right to delete. So for example, the service where when you sign up to the service, you agreed to Creative Commons licensing of everything you publish that people use. And so even under the new legislation, as far as I understand, the fact that at the point of signing up, you said everything I create will be licensed under da-da-da-da.
Under the assumption that the published material doesn't contain personal information about any other person. So if I upload the conference badge that I made for Evan, then Evan can probably force you to take it down.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a whole. Now we get into photography of people.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I this is all interesting, and the theoretical problems are
Exactly. The
interesting,
interesting point is where
we're not lawyers. We're not gonna be lawyers. That's not really our interest. So what can we do that will make this easier for everybody in this room? Because we do want each other's comments to show up, right?
I think the first step we have still works. We change up the micro format for licensing a little bit to make it more usable. And we could start by posting Creative
I'd say in
Commons.
addition, I'd say rel license can still exist. It's fine. If you do want to license a whole page, use rel license.
Absolutely.
But with a change, it would be possible to have something that I can add a license to an H entry, and for example also an H card.
Yes.
So having that on my page and sending web mentions, the other page could potentially look at my page, see that it's licensed for itself, recognize, okay, it's Creative Commons, and has some special case built in saying, if it's Creative Commons, I know that I can use the picture of the author, the name, and a snippet from the text, and then include it in its own page, and that works.
I guess the more interesting question is, and what if it doesn't? What assumptions do you make then?
Yeah.
Okay, there is no license. What do I do by default? Yes. I guess we'll just
I
carry on.
really
doing
like
it.
Probably.
the way you worked, you did it on your side, because if there is a license I don't recognize, or there isn't a license at all, I still could do something like using the picture, but really transforming it in a way that I think it's not really personal information anymore, but I'm no lawyer.
Or 9 pixels.
9 pixels, yeah.
Or use like something like these, like the icons that Twitter makes up.
Yeah.
Something like that.
That's what
Something generated.
And like a
Yeah.
pure link,
Link.
and like a pure link without content would
Yeah.
probably always be fine.
Yeah.
Genau.
And to be clear, in my implementation now, this is only for the stuff that comes in through Bridgie, because that's where I identified.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm not concerned if you're sending me a web mention.
Okay.
I don't think this is from a practical level.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Right now, anybody who uses web mentions knows what it's for, and they do it intentionally.
So this way I would have a minimal solution with a link and some, not personal, but maybe generated avatar or anything like that, and no username for things without a license, or with a license I don't recognize. And if I have a license I recognize for allowing me to use a snippet, the avatar, or anything like that, I would potentially do that.
I think Jeremy's point of what do we do when there isn't this is honestly most of us are just going to keep doing what we do and show
For
the
now,
thing
yes.
anyway, and I think that's going to be true because for a long time, because it turns out that this legal stuff only matters when there's a problem, and if someone decides they don't want their photo there, then you should respect that. But most people don't care, and also in the actual legal battles, none of this stuff plays out until there's a court case, and then even then the stuff that you thought was a law may be decided that it wasn't, or the other way around. But that's why I'm interested in we can all be proactive about expressing the intent that it's okay to reshare this stuff as a way to not to actually have the other person enforce that as a rule, but just in case someone is concerned. So if you imagine someone's building like a corporation around this, where they do have concerns and they are potential legal threat, a target, then they may be much more comforted by the fact that they do see Creative Commons licenses everywhere, and they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to actually consider building a system that will display comments, whereas they may completely not do that anymore.
So your point would be we don't change everything for the moment, but we would add the infos about licensing and everything as a best practice.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm
For the
not going to
future.
go and update my web mention receiver
No.
to hide comments, honestly. I don't think it's a problem right now. The Bridgie one's interesting. I think there's something there because there's a little less expectation that Twitter comments are going to be copied around. So maybe I'll do something on that front, maybe. But what I think the danger of this new bill is that someone new coming in and building a new social networking system is going to see this and be like, oh crap, I can't do this because of all these risks. But if they looked around and saw that everybody was very proactively licensing their content under a license that allows that to be possible, then they might be more likely to actually build that system. Right? Because I would hate to see this law stop people from building social networking applications. Sure. Right. That's the actual danger that I see.
Yeah,
not
I think like,
not.
Yeah, I think like there are many pieces in the infrastructure that required, like, if you send a web mention to a random page, it doesn't show up as a comment, only if it's nicely marked up as a micro format. I mean, like, when I'm thinking where do legal threats like this come from, it has been newspapers where I think there have been a few cases where newspapers went after bloggers that linked to their articles with too much of a quote. But of course, they mainly right now target Google News because Google has money and there's a lot more attractive. And the typical Abmahnanwälte, which try to get money go after intentional mistakes like stolen pictures and stuff like that. Yeah.
I fully agree. There's a lot of good stuff in this GDPR thing. I mean, this is, like you said, first of all, it harmonizes the law in all of the European Union. It also applies to US companies who have European consumers. As soon as your user is in the European Union, you are bound to this regulation, which might mean some US companies pulling out next year. But I think the danger that is there is that the big players, they have the resources, like Twitter. They send their army of lawyers and they write this new document and they send you, all of us, an email and says, if you are still around in 4 weeks, we assume you have a suit. But like all this grassroots development and smalls, they are basically the ones who are suffering from this. And that's, I think, the pragmatic approach is to keep innovating, especially as long as we're in this kind of rather protected environment anyways.
That's also like, because that building a service around it, hosted now, is a service around IndieWeb tech.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to know about which parts of this they've thought. Like, I mean, even like the repo, I don't know how the repost interface looks like, but like there's a few things, and Martin also just said it, yeah, because okay, if we maybe see journalists as an interesting target group, they often have like, or even like people who write articles for magazines, they often have like, okay, they can republish something on their own site, but they probably can't sub-license somebody else to post a repost of that. I think like, I'm personally not a fan of reposting implementations that copy entire articles anyways. Chris Aldridge's website confuses me every time. But yeah.
So this is slightly tangential. I'm interested in. So the new regulations, in some cases, seem like, oh yeah, this is really clear, and see what it's for. But I have an interesting situation. I run a community website. It's effectively like a social network in some ways. People can sign up. When you're on it, you can post things, right? Some of those things would be like a comment. Now this is clearly falling under this, like, okay, that user posted this content to this site, and so they should have the right to, be able to delete that content, be able to get a list of everything they've ever posted. Suppose you're contributing to something like Wikipedia. Like, what's your? At what point can you say, actually, I've decided under these regulations, I'm done with Wikipedia. Please delete my profile and all my contributions.
I don't think you. I think by contributing you agree to a license.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, one thing is I think if the Wikimedia Foundation would operate in Europe, that they would get the fact that they log IPs for anonymous edits forever.
Oh, yeah.
They would get beaten up for that.
Okay.
Because that's a.
But the edit text.
But the edit text clearly is a licensed contribution, and
so there has to be, lawyer speaking, a difference between a license and the terms of service in some kind.
Yeah.
By other, even if there isn't any, then even Twitter could go there and say everything you post on Twitter is now licensed under a special license that gives Twitter every right to do whatever they want, and you can never go to us and say please delete that.
There's a difference between content and between personal information. A post I write isn't personal information. My name is, the IP address from which it did,
so at the end,
personal information.
This is good because
no name.
Right, that's what I have currently. If someone no longer wants to partake, so the obvious stuff is like a comment, but like say some of the stuff you create collaboratively on the site I run, it's more like a Wikipedia article. It's hard to tell which bits are made by who. So if someone gets stuff, says, I'm done with this site, what I do is I anonymize their contributions. So it would be, this was posted by so and so on this date. Now becomes this was posted on this date, and there's nothing to tie it back to a person, isn't it?
That's at least a good start. Yeah.
Okay.
And also make sure that there's an agreement. People are agreeing to collaborative contributor agreement when they make edits, but that is a separate issue from the
And
personal.
make it interesting if they have inside their content.
Here's my phone number.
Yeah.
In that case, I would have to probably don't do that.
Yeah, but I think that
then we are at the point where.
Yeah, of course. But I think many of these things are also clearly. I think they would relatively quickly probably can demand from you to delete it, but it's obvious that you can't be expected to automatically delete it because you can't know what content it is. So
because it's collaborative.
I think that could be in many ways. It's poor theory crafting right now, but it could be similar to like. I forgot what I wanted to say.
Other than that, I don't have much to say. It's just that the concept
That could be similar to how it works. Like if someone posts a comment defaming somebody else on your website, you're not liable for that before you've been noticed. Before you've been given notice of it.
Is someone interested in putting a laptop on the screen and just sketching out how the micro format would look like? To have some result of today? Because it isn't that complex, I think, but it isn't that easy.
Are we talking about a new microformat or a new property?
New property.
Yeah. Right.
Property of an H entry and probably also H card.
Any property of
Or
any
anything.
microformat.
Why don't we look at the microformat wiki and see what is currently documented about license?
Not much.
And not much.
Who wants to have the screen?
Who's got the wiki up?
The microformat real.
Yep, you're further.
Do you need a adapter?
Somewhere there's.
I assume that's mine.
No.
Yeah.
So REL license has been around for a while.
Oh, that's better. This way? Okay.
Yeah. So is there any use of this other than with the rel attribute?
Obviously, I think so, is proprietary. So
Multiple licenses
there's,
available. Okay.
there are
Is there any?
we're thinking about all this all the time. Also, we people do that. Kind of, at least
Okay, and this definitely says that it.
parts of protocols.
I'm just, okay, sorry. I was just reading the examples of use.
And this very clearly says that it applies to the whole page. Is that the definition of that?
I haven't read it that far.
A page indicates that the destination of that hyperlink is licensed for the current page.
Page.
Okay.
Page.
So go to H entry.
Page.
Sign up for a wiki account.
And then search for license on here just to see if anybody's written about license. Just license of the spec. Okay.
Of the spec itself.
Interesting.
This is a brainstorming separate page or anything?
I think there is.
a licensing, sort of page licensing.
I have license issues.
Issues of
Oh, that's the issue, sounds good.
That's not good.
Oh.
What is this?
Oh, no, this is the template.
Oh, templates for posting issues.
The
Okay.
issue is an issue. Okay.
Yes, that makes sense.
Well,
no.
Whoa! My brain's going to explode.
What license
Well,
does the
okay, semantic because their web pages need to express license for external resources and portions of web pages that the new licensing microformat. Discussion on 5th of October 2006. Intent was at Technorati.
How many
Whiteboard
people here know what
results.
Technorati is?
Yeah, I've still got it.
What's on that whiteboard?
Yeah, but it's a thing that many.
It's a silo.
Yeah, but many people don't remember.
I
that,
know.
So.
Dear God.
80% hypothesis. Work is available under license. Run license works for pages. Anything with a URL.
That's so unique.
Name, yeah.
Name, title.
Okay, the other properties look like pretty much the stuff that's also in the common code.
Stuff that's in a license.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like additional like author and.
Okay. But not having. So we're not looking to create new licenses yet. We're happy with Creative Commons for now.
Let's start simple.
Let's start simple.
Yeah.
Oh, the other thing we actually should do is we should document the aspects of the posts we need to have fall under a license,
Yeah.
and then double check that Creative Commons covers it, and at least write down yes or no.
Yeah.
We don't need to make a new license if the answer is no, but we should say yes, Creative Commons. We believe that this does actually cover all the things.
Yeah.
So like when I show a comment, we can start with this. We can do a quick survey. First of all, who shows comments on their websites?
Not yet, but
Mentioned.
Mentions. Either replies or links or mentions or whatever. What of the original post do you show?
In my case, it
And
depends.
somebody write this down.
Do we?
I'm typing.
For everything, URL.
URL. Yeah.
If it has been marked up in H entry, then depending on the content of the H entry, the title of the H entry and the full content if it's available.
And do you do any sort of truncation based on length of the content? Like if somebody sent a blog post as a web mention?
I do not. So there are instances on my website where, someone did a weekly roundup post, and I'm one of 30 things that they link to. All, the full post appears on my
So you
site.
do that always, not just for replies, but for all mentions. Probably.
Yeah, because if it comes in as a like or a retweet, I don't show anything. Yeah, I don't expect there to be anything to show. I guess.
And then you show the name of the person
If there's an H card, show the name, otherwise it's just the domain name.
and photo.
I do not show
You
photo.
do not show photo. Okay.
That's just a design decision.
Yep. Yep. Okay. How about you?
I show generally the text of the is center and the image of who they are, and then the content is generally just an excerpt.
An excerpt.
Yeah.
So you don't show the full.
I think this depends how it's been marked up, but at the moment this is mainly just. I think some of the posts, the only one I've had where somebody's actually written a whole article, it's just showing a link to that article. So they may not have
Okay.
given a clear definition of what is their excerpt.
Okay.
I guess it's P summary, right?
Yeah, the summary would be a explicit way to do that. I show name of the person, photo, always the hyperlink, and then the name of the post. If it's an article with a name, I only show the name. I don't show any of the contents. And if there's no name, it shows the first 500 or so characters of the post. Because a couple of times I got really long comments and I wanted to fix that.
Are you rehosting the image?
I rehost everything. Nothing is hot linked. So I copy the image, and I actually will always, that image will never change. So if someone updates their photo later, I don't update it on past posts. Just my design decision.
Yeah.
I made.
And also like rehosting is for privacy of your visitors and things like that, a very good idea. Which is an interesting
It's
concept.
an interesting.
We,
Yeah.
I think on one indie webcamp we had the discussion.
Yeah.
Who is doing what?
And which also could mean like that, like if you need an argument why you do that, that's the answer, because you're basically
I don't
technically
want
required.
to. Yeah, I don't want to ping. I don't want to have my visitors' browsers be pinging hundreds of other websites saying that they visited this article.
Yeah.
And it potentially breaks with HTTPS and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Anybody else have any other things that they show in comments?
For me, it's twofold. If it's a web mention, I show the full post, like when Sven posted from our homebrew clubs. But if it's a website which doesn't send a web mention, but it's the what's the name? No, the good old.
Oh, pingback.
Pingback, yes. Then I use the excerpt, and I have a short.
Okay.
Because I kind of put web mention a different. And currently, still, when Bridgie, if there's Twitter comments, I show the full comment. And otherwise, with the pictures, I have the same as you do.
You rehost.
I rehost. Okay. For the same reasons, because I don't have.
Does anybody show pictures that are in the replies? I know I've seen discussions of it.
Yeah, if you include a photo in an HTML comment, it'll show up because I allow certain HTML elements in comments, but I don't display. I don't actually display the photo property yet.
Okay.
I want to, but I just haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't show anything different. I mean, I don't show photos because that's my design decision.
Okay. No author photos.
No. But I've been thinking about the difference between things coming in from Bridgie and things not coming in from Bridgie, and I think that's an interesting distinction.
Yeah.
But I haven't done anything about it.
So, essentially, it sounds like we need a license to republish a photo, author photo, or photos and posts, and republish content. That would be sort of the ideal, right? Is if everybody.
Yeah, but is the name? I mean, that's
and
I do.
Where does the
display
name?
the name?
Where does the name
You,
fall?
I believe,
Because it's not copyrightable,
Name is not,
but it's personal information.
It's personal
Personal
information.
information. Yes.
So where does
Like
that?
I-
Is
like
that?
I
I don't
think-
think that falls under Creative Commons.
Like
And
It's not.
but
It's not.
it's
copy-
Creative, on the other hand, licensing Creative Commons in many variants requires the publisher to show the name. I'd say the author name becomes part of the license. Just like in an MIT license, there's always copyright rule at the top.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that's necessary metadata and.
Because
what about I guess the photo is copyrightable, so that's not. So that would be
because
one of the things covered in the license.
Yeah, like an author photo technically could be. I've had it taken from a photographer and gotten the license to use it on my personal website.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not more.
Not more
That's
than that.
possible.
Are the meta information like publish date and time, is this personal information?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Not directly. I mean, for a lot of stuff you can make, like, everyone's location logs certainly are personal information, but like.
But only as an aggregate. Not one point is not. Really. I mean, again, this is all like this is all.
Depends, but yeah.
It's all a big it depends because none of it actually matters until it goes to court.
But
I'm pretty sure that the sort of general understanding right now is that a single location point is not identifiable by itself. But
it's interesting. I know that with photos. In Germany, the threshold for a photo of someone in public is like if their grandmother would look at that photo and recognize that they are there at that point, you're violating their rights if you don't have a permission.
Wow.
It's a theoretical approach. If people get mad.
So, but the base idea is now we have the list what we.
But we don't. But nobody uses the location.
So we could check technically if Creative Commons would cover that.
Right.
Okay.
To me, it looks like the photo is the other photo is the one thing that's tricky.
Based on our shortage of time, can we go back to the way we would do this in the micro format?
Yeah. So if you look at the H-entry page, there's a list of properties.
Yes.
So there are core properties, which are things that everybody agrees are part of H-entry.
Yes.
Because there are many examples that are published and consumed. Down below is draft. Those are things that have been published a lot, but maybe haven't been solidified yet, and below that are even more experimental ones. So somewhere on this page, there's actually a sort of a process document for proposing a new property, but it's basically it's demonstrate that it's in use in multiple places, at least published, but hopefully also consumed. So I think all it would look like is basically a U-license in this list of proposed additions to a URL that describes license, basically copy all the text from the rel license, copy that sentence from the rel license page, and then say it applies to this H-entry.
And then why U? Why not?
No, it could be P. If you
put
the entire license,
then why not the H? So why not make it the same way the H card works? When you want to have the alpha within a post, you have just an H entry with the URL, and other way around you could have the full license. I think that's the way they thought about it this way, because you could do the same way when you have the whole H license for a whole license with everything in it, then you could include it and build a tree where you have maybe subparts of a page with their own license and everything.
no, parsing the license itself is beyond.
I think so. So the way that
basically be free text.
It could.
I mean, all licenses are basically free text.
Yeah.
There's no
And all
common
attempts
structure
to make
for
encodings for them are
the reason that the H card can be a value of a author property is because if the author property is a URL and you parse that URL, you will find an H card. And an H card is a microformat because there are some there's a well-defined list of properties that people expect to find in an H card. So the question would be: are there a list of properties of a license? Not necessarily inside of the text itself, but is there at least like a name? Does it have a name?
The problem with the URL
Does it have a
Just having the URL doesn't mean that the person who owns or has control of the URL has something like versioning built in it. Because if I just reference the URL and you change the content, maybe what side effects would that have on me licensing?
Yeah. On the other hand,
But in practice,
I
like
feel-
Creative Commons does version their URLs.
exactly.
With Creative
I feel-
Commons it would work, yes.
I feel like exactly. I feel like in many cases, in online use cases, a URL is one of the best ways of identifying which license you mean, because all major ones have canonical URLs, and like taking a text file and comparing it somewhat widespread tolerant if it's identical to the license you think it is.
Yeah.
Is a lot harder. And for software, thanks to Martin again, there's like the SPDX license, which are shortcodes, which you sometimes find like in package files.
Oh, is that standardized somewhere?
That's a proposal. It seems mostly
Okay.
I think like some package managers use it.
Yeah, I've seen
It's
it.
mostly software licenses for now, but Creative Commons is in there in all versions, and it's just like shortcodes like Creative Commons attribution is CC by dash version number.
But technically the idea with P would be that since P author could potentially optional be embedded, because using P would mean we could potentially later have, without any problem, the license microformat and it would work.
There's a bit of confusion in how it is presented as well. Because the property is always just the thing. The property name is always just the last bit. And the P, U, D, T are just the prefix. What type of content is in there? And here on this page is the most common type listed.
Yeah,
so it's more like P name. It's like I'm saying P license could be like P name. You could have a paragraph that says, "You're free to copy this anywhere you like," and I could wrap that paragraph with class equal to P name. Or I have a separate URL that says, "You're free to copy my posts," and I link to that with U license instead of.
But
okay.
But
it's not
the flip side is like a counterexample of this list. I can make a page that has p-URL on a span.
Yeah.
And inside the span is a URL.
Yes.
The parser is going to see that exactly the same as if it was an A tag with URL.
Now I get it. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's what
It's literally just a parsing rule. It's not
information for the parser where to get the content from.
It's not a vocab thing. And that's why this list is kind of misleading.
I didn't get that in our lightning session.
Oh darn! I was trying to explain that.
I get that the meaning, but I didn't get that you could interchange it based on what you're.
So this is like the sort of most common best practice, but if you need to, you can use p-URL. It's kind of weird, but you could. P-photo. Yeah. What I'm getting at is if you say u-license with an href, fine. But if you say p-license with text, the consumer only knows it's a URL or text based on if it starts with HTTP.
Yes.
There isn't an indication that it came from a U prefix or a P prefix in the parse result. The end result is license is this thing.
Is this value.
This value. And the value is just text.
But me implementing it, looking on other page, I could go there and see, okay, it's u/license, then I would search for URL to maybe Creative Commons, and if it's P and it's just a string named Creative Commons attributed share alike version, it would actually mean the same for me.
Yeah, and the only thing I would say is at the point that you're consuming that, you're probably going to be using a microformats parser, which removes the prefix. So when you're actually looking at the values, you don't know what prefix was used.
Oh, you just see
a URL or text.
Value.
No.
So yeah, you would.
So you just then okay. That's the reason why I ask for the micro, because it's more difficult, but it isn't. Okay.
It's all already built in. Then you can just add.
It's just license and whatever. It's URL.
So quick, who already has a Creative Commons license or similar on their websites? No, not at all. Okay. I did a while ago. I added it to the bottom. It says the text of the site is available under this license. So
Do you use the rel attribute when you're linking?
I can't remember if I do. If I do, it's technically incorrect. But I think I will actually go and experiment and try adding it to the H entries.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting in that, to me, it feels like it would be interesting to potentially license to like a property, to like put it on the, like on the e-content. The e-content is licensed under, but that gets complicated.
That, yeah, no, unfortunately, a little more complicated.
And
That's true.
I think something the probably was intentionally ignored in the design of micropub to make it manageable.
Yeah, there's, Aaron does have a rel
Rel license?
yeah, rel license.